I am that single woman rejected by everyone, unable to marry despite being of an older age. I'm about to turn 40. I haven't married and I don't have children. To be honest, I think I could be considered a failure. My career is still uncertain, and I carry a mortgage debt of 2.5 million yuan. Even so, I spend my days thinking only about having fun and how to take care of my picky and fragile stomach. I don't like makeup and I don't bother to dress up. I've already stacked all the possible debuffs. If not marrying at this age is considered a sin, then I'm sorry, but I guess I'm already beyond redemption. A woman's life where she truly has time for herself is very short. I've just extended my own time by 10 years. Although these 10 years didn't bring happiness in the conventional sense, I believe that the light of self-sufficiency will never fade. Let's keep going.
一个40岁的大龄的未婚女生。
I am a 40-year-old single woman, and as I sit here in a quiet cafe reflecting on my life, I can't help but feel the weight of the choices I've made over the past 2 decades. 10 years of arranged dates, countless introductions, and an unending quest for the perfect match have led me to this moment of regret. My story isn't unique, but I hope sharing it will serve as a lesson to others. Don't make the same mistakes I did. When I was 20, I was in university and madly in love. My boyfriend and I met in a student club, bonding over shared dreams and simple joys. We dated for 3 years, and I was sure he was my soulmate. He was kind, supportive, and saw a future with me. But life wasn't that simple. His family's financial struggles loomed large. They lived in a small house, barely making ends meet. One day, he proposed to me in a theater, holding a bouquet of flowers, and for a moment, I was overwhelmed with emotion. Then reality hit me. He had no house, no stable career, and no way to offer me security. I said no. Breaking up with him shattered me, but I convinced myself it was the right decision. You'll find someone better, I thought, someone who could provide both love and a stable future. Yet, in hindsight, I realized that was probably the purest love I'll ever experience. By 25, I had completed my master's degree and landed a prestigious job in Beijing. I felt invincible, like I had the world at my feet. A colleague introduced me to a man who, on paper, was everything I thought I needed: a good job, a house, a car, and a stable family. He was generous and treated me well. But as we dated, I realized something was missing. Conversations felt forced, his humor didn't resonate with me, and there was no emotional depth. I ended it, certain I could find someone who met all my expectations, both practical and romantic. At 28, I met someone new. He was a doctor, smart, and kind, and I thought, this is it. For a while, things felt perfect. But then I met his family. His parents scrutinized me as though I were applying for a job, questioning everything from my background to my cooking skills. They subtly hinted that I wasn't good enough for their son. Instead of addressing the issue, I walked away. Pride stopped me from trying, and fear of rejection drove me to end something that might have worked. By the time I turned 30, I felt the pressure of time. The prospect of being alone terrified me, so I threw myself into dating apps, matchmaking events, and blind dates. The more people I met, the more discouraged I became. Every conversation felt repetitive, every meeting left me more drained. I started to wonder if love was even possible for me anymore. At 32, the reality of aging hit hard. The men introduced to me were no longer the successful, single professionals I once met. They were divorced men, men with children, or those struggling financially. My standards clashed with my growing desperation. I told myself, lower your expectations, it's better than being alone. Yet every time I compromised, I felt a deeper sense of dissatisfaction. By 35, I succumbed to family pressure and agreed to date a divorced man 10 years my senior. He was stable and kind at first, but as we got closer, his expectations suffocated me. He wanted me to quit my job and care for his child from a previous marriage. His habits, smoking, drinking, clashed with my lifestyle, and soon, our relationship was filled with arguments. I ended it, feeling like I had failed yet again. Now, at 40, I've stopped looking. My family no longer pushes me to marry, and my friends have either moved on to their own families or stopped asking about my love life altogether. I've come to terms with my choices, but that doesn't mean I don't feel regret. I look back at my 20-year-old self and wish I could tell her, love isn't perfect. Security is important, but so is connection. Don't let fear make your choices for you. The years I spent chasing perfection were years wasted. I thought there was always something better, that love would come neatly packaged with everything else I wanted. But life doesn't work that way. True love is rare, and it often comes when you least expect it. If you're young and reading this, please, take my story as a warning. Don't let fear, pride, or societal expectations dictate your happiness. If you find someone who truly cares for you, don't let them go because they don't fit a checklist. Perfection doesn't exist, and sometimes, love is messy and imperfect, and that's okay. Looking back, I would trade all the material things I once thought mattered for a chance to be with someone who truly loved me. Life is unpredictable, and when love comes your way, hold on to it. Don't let it slip through your fingers, as I did. Learn from my mistakes. Choose connection over fear, and embrace the imperfections of love.
大家好，
Hello everyone. I'm Zimo. Have you ever thought about what life would be like for a 40-year-old woman still single? I often hear the phrase, each age has its own responsibility. And indeed, in every culture we are clearly or subtly told when to start the first job, get married, have children, buy a house, or retire. But what happens if we don't follow that timeline? The pressure comes from all sides. As a 40-year-old single woman, I can tell you that 99% of the time I am searching for my happiness. And in the other 1%? I try to convince myself that having someone by my side doesn't necessarily mean I would be happier. Let me tell you about Anan, someone whose story really made me reflect. At 40, she is an independent woman. For many years, like me, she didn't care about marriage. Even though she was pressured by her parents, aunts and uncles, she remained firm in her decision to live alone. But then something happened that made her change her mind. It was at that moment that she realized, maybe getting married is necessary. Living alone can be very lonely, and sometimes even scary. Anan is an executive. She has achieved financial independence, bought a house, a car, and seemed to have everything under control. During her youth, she focused completely on work, fighting for promotions and good salaries, until she reached a leadership position. But one day, while working late at home, she started feeling dizzy and collapsed on the floor. When she woke up, she was in a hospital bed. Her colleagues, noticing that she didn't show up for work that morning, tried calling, but she didn't answer. Worried, they called the police, who went to her house and found her unconscious. This story makes me think about the dangers and challenges of being a single woman living alone. When we pass 40, our bodies start to show signs of wear, and small health issues pop up unexpectedly. If there is someone by our side to care for us, things might be very different. It is in these vulnerable moments, when we feel sick or helpless, that we realize how important it is to have someone close. Marriage, many times, is not just about having children or meeting social expectations. It's about mutual support, about two people helping each other and facing life together. The strength of two is always greater than that of one. I believe that's where the value of marriage lies. Of course, each person has their own plans and ways of seeing life. No one has the right to decide for someone else, and each of us should have the freedom to choose our own path. What do you think about this? Leave a comment. The reason why at this point my attitude toward relationships is not as rushed is because I have spent a long time putting a lot of energy and effort into love and relationships. As I've mentioned before, I have many single older female friends, some of whom are not really interested in looking for a relationship, while I, in the past, was always the one chasing, seeking. When I was in my 20s, there were fewer arranged dates. I was never the type to actively seek them out, but I'd often meet people through friends. However, as soon as I heard the person's conditions or knew the meeting would be just a casual conversation, I wasn't interested. I didn't really spend much time on this, it was rare for me. Back then, I thought that by the time I reached 27 or 28, I would eventually meet someone. But when I turned 28 and then 30 and still hadn't met anyone, I started to feel a little anxious. Especially when I was 30. I felt like I had matured a lot more than when I first started working, and I thought I was ready to be in a relationship, even thinking about having children in the future and dealing with the issues that would come up. I believed I would meet someone quickly, so I put in a lot of effort, went on many arranged dates, especially between the ages of 30 and 33 or 34. Over those years, I met a lot of people, through friends, acquaintances, even some who didn't know me well but thought I was nice and wanted to introduce me to someone. I also met people online and through matchmakers. I tried everything to find someone. As for the current outcome, I'm very satisfied. If I think about all the people I've been involved with or even just those I met on arranged dates, it doesn't matter how good their criteria were or what the person was like. If you ask me if I regret not taking certain opportunities, I've thought a lot about it. And my answer is no, I wouldn't have chosen differently. The opportunities one missed in the past I still wouldn't choose. I believe the current outcome is the best possible. My future in love, what's to come, should be waiting for me on the path ahead. So let's keep moving forward.
I noticed an interesting phenomenon. Whenever I come across topics online about older single women, there's usually a wave of criticism. Many people say they have too high expectations and, in the context of arranged marriages, they create unrealistic demands, almost as if they are asking for the impossible. The media often reports on this, mentioning how the first generation of older single women is already living in nursing homes, leading tragic lives. When did these older single women become a negative image, widely criticized? And who exactly is making these harsh criticisms? Who is, in fact, affecting these women? If we observe closely, it's not hard to see that most of the criticism comes from two groups, the elderly and men. From the elderly's perspective, it's easy to understand this resistance. They grew up with the tradition of passing on the family lineage. When an older single woman raises the standards for marriage, it becomes harder to find a partner. This makes their desire to continue the family line increasingly difficult, which leads them to criticize these women. In the case of men, although many of them criticize these women with a morally superior tone, as if they are speaking from a place of impartiality, the truth is that this happens because their own interests are being affected. These women's behavior is directly interfering with what they want. For many men, these women are creating demands they consider excessive, and in their view, these demands don't match their qualities. And if this begins to affect other women, many common men will face even more difficulty finding a partner. This explains some of the hostility that many men feel toward these women. However, if we look from the perspective of many young women, we'll see that the demands of older single women are not always as outrageous. They're simply asking for a partner whose qualities are slightly better than theirs. It's important to remember that in the animal kingdom, males, when looking for a mate, often showcase their best qualities. When two males compete for a female, the stronger, more suitable one for reproduction is chosen. In nature, animals understand that they should select partners who are better suited for reproduction. So, it's no surprise that humans, especially women, also seek a partner who is more suitable, not just physically, but in many other aspects. The human logic follows the principle of rising and progressing. I believe most women also expect, in some way, to find someone stronger, more capable than they are, not someone with fewer qualities. However, for many men who criticize older single women, their demands seem unreasonable. Deep down, this is because of a very narrow view of women's value. Even in a modern society, the judgment men make about women's value is still very limited, mainly focusing on two aspects: youthful beauty and the ability to have children. Other aspects are seen as secondary or even irrelevant. As time passes, these two aspects decrease in women. Therefore, in the eyes of many men, an older single woman is seen as a devalued commodity. No matter how successful or talented she is in her career, if these two values decrease, she is no longer entitled to demand a partner with higher qualities. For many men, when a woman, with her reduced qualities, still demand a high marriage standard, it is seen as a challenge to their dignity. On the other hand, women still feel confident in their abilities and believe that it's fair to seek a partner who is slightly better than them in some aspects. This also explains why many men harbor resentment toward these women. They believe that these women have a distorted view of themselves and that their behavior may influence other women to create impossible demands, making the dating market even more difficult and harming male interests. I remember a case of a woman in her early 30s, with good looks and a nice body, who simply asked for a partner with similar qualities to hers in the arranged marriage market, and she was criticized to the point of crying by a middle-aged man. I'll never forget that situation. So, what do you think? Do older single women have a distorted view of themselves? Or do men still make very narrow judgments about women's value? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Where is the future of older women who ended up alone? The harsh reality is that 95% of them end up becoming lonely in their old age. After the age of 30, the chances of finding true love are almost non-existent. Either they grow old alone or marry someone out of convenience just to have someone. Today, there is a popular idea that says women should be independent and that marriage is an emotional suicide. The problem is that many naive girls embrace this poison disguised as wisdom, not realizing that with a salary of $3,000 per month, the only valuable thing they have is their youth. When they age, the best time to find a partner will have passed. Now, social media is filled with messages promoting individualism, but no one sees that this is all part of a capitalist strategy. Companies, in their pursuit of profit, target young women and convince them that they should love themselves, abandon the idea of having children, never depend on a man, and spend all their money on themselves, becoming the perfect independent woman. The issue is that many women believe this wholeheartedly and ignore the future. They spend their youth having fun, but every month their wallet is empty and they can't save a penny. To be honest, employers love hiring this type of employee because they know these girls are the easiest to manipulate. They are highly susceptible to workplace psychological abuse. They don't want to get married, they don't want to date, they don't think about having children, and they don't need maternity leave. The problem is that youth doesn't last forever, and not every girl will be able to become an independent queen. What is more frightening for women who end up alone? The real nightmare is that, if a career hasn't been properly built, the option to marry and have children is no longer available. At that point, you find yourself competing with men in the workforce. Over time, your appearance will deteriorate, and you'll end up without money, love, or a marriage. What you'll have left are landlords demanding rent, a bank balance that's almost non-existent, and the health of your parents declining more and more. Some girls in their 20s aren't worried. They live life eating, drinking, and having fun. But when they reach 25 or 26 and the people around them start having children, they still don't feel the rush. They don't want to marry just any man. They need to find the perfect one. When they turn 30, they start to panic, trying to get into the dating market. But by then, finding a good man is nearly impossible. Men with good conditions usually marry early, and the few who marry later tend to prefer younger women. These men have money, houses, and cars, and they won't be looking for a woman in her 30s. These girls, when young, didn't worry about anything. They didn't save money, didn't buy a house or car because they thought that over time, once they got married, those things would come naturally. But have you ever stopped to think that over time your appearance will fade, but your money will still be scarce? At that point, who will approach you, willing to offer you a house and a car? Therefore, if you're not sure you can become a strong and successful woman, it's best to marry while you're still in your prime. Know that the generations born in the 90s and 2000s are the most vulnerable because they have a high chance of becoming the outcasts of society, especially those who don't marry and don't have children. They won't be able to leave descendants and will always be on the margins of society. While their parents are still alive, they might get some support, but after many years, they'll end up becoming old and lonely with no one to rely on. What's even scarier is that, with the declining birth rate, the future will be a society where youth is a precious commodity, but money will be worth little. When the generations of the 90s and 2000s grow old, the young will become the most valuable. Because no one has children, society will age rapidly, and the young will become the most valuable asset. These people will live a bitter life because when they were young, they were exploited, and when they grow old, they won't have anyone to support them. Smart women marry early, have children, and ensure that when their children grow up, they'll have time to enjoy life, eat, drink, and have fun, even without working, supported by their husbands and children. Naive girls will follow older influencers online shouting about independence, brainwashed by consumerism, living a life of high spending, spending all their money. They won't think about love or marriage, abandoning the idea of having children, and won't build a family. They will give their youth to work and criticizing men, and when they get old, they'll lie in a hospital bed, regretting not having had children. The hardest thing in the world, in reality, isn't being independent or enduring the judgmental looks of others, but finding someone with love and connection and building a happy family. Marriage isn't as dull as it seems. No amount of money can replace the support of a family member. The world is full of beautiful landscapes, and we'll talk more about that in the next video. See you then. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you in the next video.